You seem to have an emphasis on the role that a mother plays, and it seems to be more important in your view than the role that a father plays, or maybe even that a nanny or some other caregiver could play. And I noticed that on your first book, which was written in 2017, being there, on the cover it says, "Why prioritizing motherhood," in bigger letters, "in the first 3 years matters." Scientifically, evolutionarily, with studies and research, how can you make the case to me to make me believe that the role of the mother in particular is essential versus a father or other caregiver?
So, in fact, in the book, it talks about the difference between mothers and fathers, because that's an important question. And the reason I wrote about mothers is not because fathers are unimportant, but fathers are important in a different way. So there's a whole debate in society about this kind of idea of gender neutrality, that mothers and fathers are interchangeable. But actually, from an evolutionary perspective, as mammals, they're not interchangeable. They serve different functions. And those roles and those behaviors are connected to nurturing hormones. So mothers are really important for what we call sensitive empathic nurturing when children are infants and toddlers. That means that when children are in distress, mothers soothe babies and therefore regulate their emotions from moment to moment. Every time a mother soothes a baby with skin-to-skin contact and eye contact and the soothing tone of her voice, she's leaning into that baby's pain and she is regulating that baby's emotions. And the way I like to think about it is that, when babies are born, they're born emotionally disjointed. Think about sailing in the Atlantic. This is how babies' emotions go. They'll go from 0 to 60 in 3 seconds with their emotions. And where we want to get babies is to sailing in the Caribbean, not flatlining, but we want them to be able to regulate their emotions, but they're not born that way. And so mothers, because they soothe the baby from moment to moment, when they're physically and emotionally present enough in the first 3 years, they help a baby to learn how to regulate their emotions. So by 3 years of age, 85% of the right brain is developed. And by 3 years of age, babies can then start to internalize the ability to regulate their own emotions. Now, if mothers aren't present as the primary attachment figures to do that mirroring of emotion, to do that soothing of their emotions, then babies don't learn how to regulate their emotions. The other thing that's important that mothers do is they buffer babies from stress by wearing them on their body for the first year. And then by being as present as possible for 3 years, they actually protect babies' brains from cortisol, the stress hormone. So there is a hormone called oxytocin. It's the love hormone. And it is protective against cortisol. The more a mother nurtures with sensitive empathic nurturing, meaning when the baby cries, the mother goes, "Oh, sweetheart, let me see the boo-boo, let me kiss the boo-boo." That actually raises the oxytocin in the baby's brain, which then protects the baby from cortisol.
Can a father do that?
So now, fathers. Why are fathers important? So fathers also produce oxytocin, but it has a different effect on their brain. So for mothers, oxytocin makes mothers sensitive, empathic nurturers, very vigilant to the baby's distress. When fathers produce oxytocin, it comes from a different part of their brain, and it makes them more what we call playful, tactile stimulators of babies. What does that sound like to you?
Playful, tactful stimulators of babies.
Throwing the baby up in the air and
Okay, yeah, like
tickling the
messing around.
baby and running after the baby and roughhousing. And so that's important for a variety of reasons. First, it encourages things like exploration and risk-taking. It encourages separation. And fathers do this really important thing, which is they help the baby to learn to regulate certain emotions. So mothers help to regulate sadness, fear, distress. Fathers help to regulate excitement and aggression. So when fathers aren't in the house, when there are single mothers raising children without a father, often little boys develop behavioral problems, is what we're seeing, that they can't regulate their aggression because fathers help little boys in particular, but little girls too, to regulate aggression. So when fathers aren't around, you'll often see little boys who are more impulsive, who are more aggressive. So the answer is Fathers and mothers are both critical to the development of children, which is a very controversial thing to say today, because if you're raised without one, you are missing a piece. You cannot have two fathers for a child. A child needs a mother and a father. If you're going to have two men, then one of them has to play that sensitive, empathic role. The other has to play the playful, tactile stimulation role. Same with two women who are raising children. It's better to have a father and a mother than two mothers. So which of you is going to be the dad? Which of you is going to roughhouse and play basketball and roll around on the ground and tickle the baby and encourage exploration and risk-taking? And
Can't you both do half each? Like,
no,
so
no,
couldn't...
no. And I'll tell you why. It's very confusing to children. When parents say, I'm both mother and father to my child, I say, no, it's very confusing to children. They need to have a mother figure and a father figure. And I say that knowing today's politics and knowing today's social situation. You can have a mother figure who's not a mother. Maybe it's a nanny. Maybe it's a grandmother. You need a mother figure. And you need that mother figure to be around a lot. If that mother figure is the one who provides the sensitive, empathic nurturing. So some of this can be taught, but it can't be taught unless you first acknowledge that there are differences. If we cannot as a society acknowledge the inconvenient truth that men and women are different in terms of their nurturing behaviors, then we can't teach anybody anything.
I'm looking at some stats here in front of me on a graph, which I was just reading as you're explaining that, because it seems to be quite relevant. And it shows that in 1960, 1 in 10 mothers were the sole primary breadwinner.
Yeah.
Now, it's almost at half. It's on its way to half.
I know.
Almost half of mothers are the sole or primary breadwinner in 2016. So, I mean, these mothers can't just quit their jobs.
So
If there's
it's a good question. I get a lot of people coming to me and saying, and this is very common, I want to quit my job. I want to downscale. I want to work part-time. But my husband won't support it because I made a promise that I would be the primary breadwinner. And now I want to switch and he won't switch, or he doesn't support me giving up my high-paying job. But I feel this transformation of being with my baby and I don't want to leave my baby. The problem with young people is they promise each other, they make promises to each other that they probably should not make. Do not promise your spouse that nothing will change when you have a baby. Say to your spouse, let's prepare for everything to change. Let's believe that anything is possible, and let's prepare. Let's strategize. Let's say, what if I want to stay home with the baby? What if I may not feel like that now, but what if I see this baby and I fall in love with this baby and I want to stay home and I'm the mother and I want to breastfeed and I don't want to go back to work for a while? And so then you say, what would that scenario look like? What could we do? What could we downscale in terms of our material life and our lifestyle that makes it possible for me to stay home? And I don't think we do that. Instead, women say nothing's going to change and men say nothing's going to change. And then they have babies and they're not prepared for the changes that occur. Changes occur in men too. It's not just women. I mean, fathers also can have this transformation, right? Where they also want to work less, or, sometimes the transformation comes in the form of wanting to work less and being home. Sometimes it comes in the form of wanting to go out and take on the world so they can provide for their family,
Yeah.
But it does stimulate something. It stimulates some evolutionary response in men and women. The hardest thing I find is when men and women compete. It was much easier in the olden days. Now, not everything was good in the olden days, but you would say the idea that roles were defined meant that men and women didn't compete over their roles. Now, what I think is causing a lot of these divorces and what's causing a lot of marital conflict is that men and women compete over everything. They compete over who's going to make more money. They compete over who's going to care for the baby. And So it's like you're a CEO of a company, you had your own company. So you can't have co-CEOs. I mean, I don't know if you did, but it doesn't work. I mean, anybody that I've ever treated that says we're going to do co-CEOs, it always falls apart. You can have a CEO, you can have a president, you can have the head of marketing, you can have a CFO, you can have a COO. These are different roles. And they don't compete with one another. They work as a team. Parenting is a team sport, not a competitive sport. And so what's happening today, because of all this gender neutrality and I'm as good as you and you're as good as me and we're the same, it means that couples are competing with one another. And that's causing so much tension, because what's best is when couples complement each other. When their differences mean that as a team, they work well to care for a child. And I would say the secret to success in a marriage is save your competition for the tennis court, for the basketball court, for running in the park. But don't compete over child rearing. Who's going to take care of the children? Don't compete over who makes more money. Find a way to complement each other and be a team.
There's so many mothers listening now that are very career driven. And you may be causing some existential crises. You may be reaffirming a lot of what they believe and think and what they feel intuitively. Are you saying then that for those women that are pursuing, high octane careers in leadership roles that also want to have children, that it's one or the other?
No, I'm saying that there are certain careers, realistically, here's the inconvenient truth again, bunch of inconvenient truths. There are certain careers that are harder to be a good mother. Period. I'm saying that. I know it's a harsh talk, but there it is. There are certain careers that are too demanding to be present for your children, whether you're a mother or a father. You think if you're a father who's a CEO who's traveling around the world and misses your children's birthday and misses your children's soccer games and misses your children's piano concerts and isn't there to pick them up at school or have breakfast with them or have dinner at the end of the day, you think that child is going to have a healthy relationship with that parent? Another myth. Here we are. I told you I was going to weave the myths in. Quality versus quantity time. You cannot be there for your children on your own time. You have to be there on their time. Meaning quality time is a narcissistic fantasy. I can be there on my time. So my child sits at home and is like a vase on the counter, waiting for me to come home. And then I come home and there I can be present for my child. Your child has needed you all day long. And when you come home, that's on your time. You need to be there a quality of time as well as a quantity of time. I always say to people that you can be physically present but be emotionally checked out, but you can't be emotionally present if you're not physically there enough of the time. And that's just a reality. So what are the careers that are really good for whoever's going to be the primary attachment figure? Service fields where you have your own business and you can make your own schedule around your children, where your children don't work around you, you work around your children. Physical therapy, psychotherapy, speech therapy, consulting maybe. Anything that's entrepreneurial, anything that is a service field.
CEO, podcaster, investor, entrepreneur, author.
No, I'm going to disagree with you. I'm going to say you can, but you have to be willing to set limits with yourself. So you have to be willing to say, do you know Monet, the painter?
Yeah.
He was famous in his own life. Now, most painters have to be dead to be famous. And he painted on a very modest schedule. He'd get up in the morning to catch the light, and then he'd be done by like 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon. He'd have dinner with his family. We are the architects of our own lives.
Kind of.
No, not kind of.
I'm representing the opinion of some people who might be listening. There's
okay.
There's
So,
real fundamental.
So who are the people who can't architect their own lives? You want to be who do you think? I would say hedge fund managers.
Okay, let me tell you then.
Yeah.
So I was 18 years old, dropped out of university, probably had sex that year. So if I had sex that year and had a baby,
Yeah.
and then I became a single parent. At the time, I had 2 CCJs. I was broke. I was shoplifting food to feed myself. I'd printed off the dole forms. I never sent them in, but the forms where you get, like government assistance. And I was working in call centers, working night shifts, because that was the best job I could get to pay for the rent that I had every month. If I'd had a baby at that exact moment in time, I don't think I would be, it wouldn't resonate with me what you're saying about being the architect of my own destiny, because there is like immediate emergencies. I can't feed myself, let alone a kid.
So I'll tell you.
And I also didn't have any family within hours. My mum had basically disowned me because I dropped out of university. I was alone.
Did you have a baby at 18?
No.
Okay.
I haven't had kids yet. I'm hoping to.
Okay. So, first of all, it's a good reason to use birth control and not have a baby at 18. But okay, let's put that aside for a second. Let's put that aside for a second. Let's say that what we should be promoting in this world, I'm going to say this, it's controversial, is that whoever is the primary attachment figure has a career that they have control over and flexibility. Maybe the other person doesn't. Maybe the other person works for someone or whatever. But in my book, I interview a lot of different women from a lot of different socioeconomic backgrounds. And one of the women that I interviewed was a nanny. And she said she had 3 children. And she said that the way that I raised my children, because I was a single mother raising 3 children, I had to work to pay the rent. She said, but I made sure that I didn't work past 5 o'clock. I never worked past 5 o'clock. I'd come home at 5 o'clock. I didn't go out at night. People would say, let's go. I said, no, my children, this is my time with my children. So I don't go out at night. I don't go out on weekends. When I'm not working, I am with my children. And my children knew that I had to work. But the way I used my free time was very carefully.
Are we recording? 87% of people don't subscribe on the Clips channel.
Yeah.
Taking liberties. What? Just coming for free and then bouncing. What? 87%? 90% of people on the Clips channel don't subscribe.
That's what it says here.
So I've been doing all this for free. You've been consuming all these clips for free. Listen, we'll make a deal. I'm really going to make these clips amazing, and you're in the Clips algorithm on our show. So can I ask a favor? Please, can you hit the subscribe button? If you've watched more than one before, how about that? If you've watched more than one, first one free, buy one, get one free. The second one, I'm going to have to ask you to subscribe. If this is the first time you've seen a clip on this channel, move along. You don't need to subscribe. But if you've seen one before, please do me a favor, help a guy out, hit the subscribe button. Thank you so much.